The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain of the Afghan mountains as Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez adjusted his binoculars for the third time. 22 years of military service had taught him to trust his instincts, and something about the figure positioned on the ridge 800 meters away didn't add up. Through the heat shimmer, he could make out the distinctive silhouette of a Barrett M82A 150 caliber rifle, but the shooter behind it seemed smaller than expected. Rodriguez had been leading SEAL Team 7 through this particular valley for the past 6 days, hunting a high-value target who had been coordinating attacks against coalition forces. Intelligence suggested the target was holed up in a compound 3 kilometers northeast of their current position. What intelligence hadn't mentioned was the presence of what appeared to be an Overwatch sniper, positioned perfectly to cover their approach route. The figure on the ridge had been motionless for over an hour. Most snipers, even experienced ones, would have shifted position at least once during that time frame. Rodriguez had observed enemy combatants before, but this level of discipline was unusual. The shooter's positioning was textbook perfect, elevated, concealed, with multiple escape routes and clear fields of fire covering the entire valley approach. Rodriguez whispered into his radio. "Phoenix Base, this is Badger 7. We have possible hostile sniper, grid reference Tango 57942, requesting intelligence on known enemy assets in Overwatch positions." The response crackled back within minutes. "Badger 7 Phoenix Base, no known enemy sniper assets in your area. Proceed with caution and maintain observation." Something felt wrong. Rodriguez had spent enough time in these mountains to know that Taliban snipers, while dangerous, rarely demonstrated this level of tactical awareness. Their usual approach involved hit-and-run tactics, not patient Overwatch operations that required hours of motionless observation. This felt different, almost professionally trained. Through his scope, Rodriguez studied the rifle setup more carefully. The Barrett was mounted on what appeared to be a high-end bipod system, and he could make out the distinctive shape of advanced optics. These weren't standard Taliban weapons. The equipment alone was worth more than most insurgent cells could afford, suggesting either outside funding or something else entirely. As Rodriguez continued his observation, his second-in-command, Petty Officer First Class Stevens, crawled up beside him. Stevens had been with the team for 3 years and possessed an almost supernatural ability to read terrain and identify threats. "Chief, you seeing what I'm seeing up there?" Stevens whispered, pointing toward the ridge. "Depends on what you think you're seeing," Rodriguez replied, never taking his eyes off the target. "That's not standard insurgent positioning. Look at the angle of the rifle, the way they're using the terrain for concealment. That's professional military training, not some Taliban fighter with a stolen rifle." Rodriguez nodded slowly. Stevens was right. The more he observed, the more convinced he became that they weren't dealing with a typical enemy combatant. The positioning, the equipment, the discipline, it all pointed to someone with advanced military training. The sun continued its arc across the sky, and still the figure on the ridge remained motionless. Rodriguez had seen plenty of snipers in his career, both enemy and friendly, but this level of patience was extraordinary. Even his own team's designated marksman couldn't maintain perfect stillness for this long, without some form of movement. Around midday, Rodriguez noticed something that made his blood run cold. Through his binoculars, he caught a glimpse of the shooter's profile when they shifted slightly to track a bird that had landed nearby. The facial features were distinctly feminine, and what he had initially taken for a traditional head covering appeared to be long hair, tied back under a tactical cap. "Stevens," Rodriguez whispered urgently, "I think we might be dealing with a female sniper." Stevens raised his own binoculars and studied the target for several minutes. "Chief, if that's what I think it is, we might be looking at something completely different than what we were briefed for." Rodriguez's mind raced through the possibilities. Female snipers were rare but not unheard of in modern warfare. Some of the most effective long-range shooters in military history had been women, possessing the patience, attention to detail, and steady nerves that made exceptional marksmen. But a female sniper operating alone in the Afghan mountains raised serious questions about who she was and what her mission might be. The tactical situation was becoming increasingly complex. Rodriguez's team was pinned in their current position by the Overwatch sniper, unable to advance toward their objective without exposing themselves to potential fire. At the same time, something about the whole scenario felt wrong. If this was an enemy sniper, why hadn't she engaged? His team had been visible for hours, presenting multiple opportunities for an attack. As the afternoon wore on, Rodriguez made a decision that would contradict standard operating procedures, but felt right based on his instincts. Instead of calling in an airstrike or artillery barrage to neutralize the potential threat, he decided to attempt communication, using hand signals. Rodriguez positioned his team to provide covering fire, while he moved to a position where he could attempt to establish visual contact with the mysterious sniper. It was a calculated risk, but something told him that direct engagement might reveal more about their situation than continued observation from a distance. As Rodriguez moved into position, he reflected on the dozens of combat situations he had navigated throughout his career. This felt different from anything he had encountered before. The presence of a lone female sniper, with professional-grade equipment in one of the most dangerous regions of Afghanistan, suggested a story that was far more complex than a simple insurgent threat. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western peaks when Rodriguez finally positioned himself where he could attempt to make contact with the figure on the ridge, setting the stage for an encounter that would challenge everything he thought he knew about the battlefield. Chief Rodriguez took a deep breath and made a decision that went against every tactical manual he had ever studied. Instead of maintaining his concealed position, he slowly stood up, making himself visible to the sniper on the ridge. His hands were clearly empty, positioned away from his weapons in what he hoped would be recognized as a non-threatening gesture. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. The figure on the ridge remained motionless, the massive Barrett rifle still trained on the valley below. Rodriguez could feel his heart pounding as he stood exposed, knowing that a single squeeze of the trigger could end his life instantly. Then, almost imperceptibly, he saw the rifle's barrel shift slightly, no longer aimed directly at his position. Through his peripheral vision, Rodriguez could see Stevens and the rest of his team positioned to provide covering fire if the situation went sideways. But something told him that wouldn't be necessary. The sniper's failure to engage, despite having multiple opportunities, suggested something other than hostile intent. After what felt like an eternity, Rodriguez saw movement on the ridge. The figure behind the rifle was shifting position, and for the first time in hours, the weapon was no longer aimed into the valley. Slowly, deliberately, the sniper raised one hand in what appeared to be an acknowledgement of Rodriguez's gesture. Rodriguez keyed his radio with extreme caution. "Stevens, I'm going to attempt to close the distance. Maintain overwatch, but do not engage unless I give the signal or take fire." "Chief, this is completely against protocol," Stevens responded, though his voice carried more concern than criticism. "I know," Rodriguez replied, "but something about this situation isn't adding up. Stay sharp and be ready." Rodriguez began a careful approach up the rocky slope, moving in a way that kept his weapons clearly visible but non-threatening. Each step was calculated, designed to demonstrate peaceful intent while maintaining the ability to react if the situation changed. The climb was steep and treacherous, made more difficult by the full combat gear he carried. As he got closer, details became clearer. The sniper was definitely female, probably in her late 20s or early 30s. Her equipment was not only expensive but meticulously maintained. The Barrett rifle showed signs of heavy use but careful care, and her tactical gear appeared to be a mix of military-grade equipment from different countries. When Rodriguez reached a position about 50 meters from the sniper's nest, she finally turned to face him directly. Her features were sharp and focused, with eyes that carried the 1,000-yard stare Rodriguez had seen in veteran combat soldiers. She was wearing what appeared to be modified military fatigues with no visible unit patches or identifying markers. "American?" she called out in accented English, her voice carrying clearly across the rocky terrain. "United States Navy," Rodriguez responded, keeping his hands visible. "Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, SEAL Team 7. The woman studied him for a long moment before responding. "I am Captain Elena Volkov, formerly of Russian Spetsnaz, currently operating independently." Rodriguez felt his world shift slightly. A former Russian Special Forces operator, alone in the Afghan mountains with a .50 caliber rifle, was not something covered in any of his mission briefings. The implications were staggering, both tactically and politically. "Captain, what's your status out here?" Rodriguez asked, maintaining his non-threatening posture while his mind raced through possible scenarios. "Complicated," Elena replied, with what might have been the hint of a smile. "I have been tracking the same target you seek, the compound to the northeast. 3 days ago, I eliminated 2 of his bodyguards from this position." Rodriguez's radio crackled with Stevens's voice. "Chief, Phoenix Base is requesting immediate sitrep. They're tracking your position and want to know why you've broken cover." Elena apparently heard the transmission because she nodded toward Rodriguez's radio. "Your command will want explanations I cannot provide through normal channels. Perhaps we should discuss this more privately." The situation was becoming increasingly surreal. Rodriguez was face to face with a former enemy special forces operator who claimed to be hunting the same target as his team. Standard protocol demanded immediate detention and interrogation, but Elena's calm demeanor and apparent cooperation suggested a different approach might be more productive. "Captain Volkov, I need to understand what you're doing here, and why you've been observing my team for the past several hours without engaging." Elena's expression grew more serious. "Chief Rodriguez, I have been in these mountains for 6 weeks, hunting a man who killed my entire team during a mission that officially never happened. Your target and mine are the same person, but your intelligence package does not include the full scope of his operations." She gestured toward the Barrett rifle beside her. "This weapon has served me well in that pursuit. 2 weeks ago, I achieved a confirmed kill at 3,247 meters, eliminating one of his lieutenants who was coordinating an arms shipment. It is currently the longest confirmed sniper kill in this theater of operations." Rodriguez felt a chill run down his spine. A 3,247-meter shot was beyond the range of most sniper rifles, and required not only exceptional marksmanship skills, but also advanced ballistic calculations and perfect environmental awareness. The claim was either an outrageous lie or an indication that he was dealing with one of the most skilled snipers in the world. "That's over 2 miles, Rodriguez said, unable to keep the amazement out of his voice. 3,247 meters to be precise, Elena confirmed. The wind conditions were nearly perfect. Temperature was steady and the target remained stationary for the 17 minutes required to calculate the shot. It was the culmination of 15 years of training and experience. Rodriguez keyed his radio again. "Stevens, patch me through to Phoenix Base. Priority communication required." While waiting for the connection, Rodriguez studied Elena more carefully. Her equipment told a story of someone who had been operating independently for an extended period. Her gear showed signs of improvisation and adaptation, suggesting she had been cut off from normal supply lines. Yet her physical condition appeared excellent, and her mental state seemed stable despite what must have been weeks of isolation in hostile territory. "Chief Rodriguez," Elena said quietly, "before you speak with your command, you should know that the target in that compound has information about planned attacks against American forces. Information that died with my team. I am the only person left who knows the full scope of what he is planning." The radio crackled to life with the voice of Rodriguez's commanding officer. "Badger 7, Phoenix Base, report your status immediately." Rodriguez looked at Elena, then at the compound in the distance, then back at the woman who claimed to possess critical intelligence about threats against his countrymen. In that moment, he realized that the next few minutes would determine not only the success of his mission, but, potentially, the lives of hundreds of American service members who might be walking into a trap they didn't even know existed. Rodriguez pressed the radio transmit button, knowing that his next words would either escalate the situation beyond control or potentially save American lives. "Phoenix Base, Badger 7. I have encountered a friendly asset with critical intelligence regarding our primary target. Requesting immediate patch to senior command for sensitive information transfer." There was a long pause before the response came. "Badger 7, explain friendly asset. Your position shows you in direct contact with an unknown individual." Rodriguez looked at Elena, who was watching him intently while keeping one hand near her sidearm. He made a decision that would define his career. Phoenix Base asset is former Allied Special Forces, currently operating independently against the same target. Claims possession of actionable intelligence regarding imminent threats to American personnel. Elena nodded approvingly at his carefully chosen words. "Tell them," she said quietly, "that I have video evidence of the target meeting with individuals from 3 different terrorist organizations. Meetings that took place after your intelligence community believed he had gone into hiding. Rodriguez relayed the information, and this time the response was immediate. Badger 7, maintain position. Senior intelligence officer will be on your frequency in 2 minutes. Do not repeat. Do not allow the individual to leave your sight. During the brief wait, Elena moved to a more comfortable position while keeping her weapons visible but non-threatening. Rodriguez noticed that her movements were economical and precise, showing the kind of muscle memory that came from years of combat operations. Chief Rodriguez, Elena said, there are things about this mission that your briefers did not tell you, because they do not know them. The man in that compound is not simply a mid-level coordinator. He is planning something that will make the attacks of the past year look insignificant. Before Rodriguez could respond, his radio crackled with a new voice. Badger 7, this is Colonel Harrison, J2 Intelligence. Please provide detailed description of your contact and her claimed intelligence. Rodriguez keyed the microphone. Colonel, contact claims to be Captain Elena Volkov, former Russian Spetsnaz operating independently. She states she has video evidence of meetings between our target and multiple terrorist organizations, occurring within the past 2 weeks. Copy. Badger 7. Captain Volkov, if you can hear this transmission, please respond directly. Elena reached for Rodriguez's radio. Colonel Harrison, this is Elena Volkov. I have been tracking Habib al-Rashid for 6 weeks. He killed my team during a joint operation that your government requested, but cannot officially acknowledge. I have documented evidence of his plans to coordinate a multi-city attack using weapons that were supposed to have been destroyed years ago. The radio was silent for nearly 30 seconds. When Colonel Harrison's voice returned, it carried a tension that hadn't been there before. Captain Volkov, what type of weapons are we discussing? Chemical weapons, Colonel. Specifically, sulfur, mustard, and sarin gas, cached in locations across 3 different countries. Al-Rashid has been selling access to these weapons to the highest bidders. I have recordings of him negotiating with representatives from groups that have already infiltrated major population centers. Rodriguez felt his stomach drop. Chemical weapons attacks in major cities would represent a catastrophic escalation in the global terror threat. If Elena's information was accurate, they weren't just hunting a single target. They were sitting on intelligence that could prevent mass casualties. Captain, Colonel Harrison continued, I need you to understand that what you're claiming has enormous implications. We will need to verify your intelligence through multiple channels before we can act on it. Elena's expression hardened. Colonel, with respect, you do not have time for multiple verification channels. According to the intelligence I gathered, the first attack is scheduled for 72 hours from now. If you delay action to verify information through bureaucratic processes, people will die. Rodriguez could hear heated discussion in the background of the radio transmission before Colonel Harrison returned. Badger 7, new orders. Establish a secure perimeter around Captain Volkov's position. We are dispatching a helicopter for immediate extraction and debriefing. ETA 45 minutes. Elena shook her head firmly. Negative on the extraction, Colonel. Al-Rashid has anti-aircraft capabilities that your intelligence files do not reflect. 2 days ago, I watched him shoot down a helicopter with a shoulder-fired missile. Your aircraft would be flying into a trap. Rodriguez quickly transmitted Elena's warning, which resulted in another long pause before Colonel Harrison responded. Captain Volkov, describe the anti-aircraft capabilities you observed. Soviet-era SA-24 Grinch missiles, at least 3 launchers that I could identify. He also has a Zu-23-2 anti-aircraft gun positioned on the north side of the compound, concealed under camouflage netting. Your aerial reconnaissance would not have detected it because it is only uncovered at night. Rodriguez had never heard of some of the weapons Elena was describing, but the specific technical details suggested she knew exactly what she was talking about. The tactical picture was becoming increasingly complex, with his team potentially surrounded by far more sophisticated defenses than their intelligence had indicated. Captain, Rodriguez said, if the situation is as dangerous as you describe, why haven't you taken action against the target yourself? Elena gestured toward her rifle and then toward the compound in the distance. Chief Rodriguez, I am one person with limited ammunition and no backup. Al-Rashid travels with 12 bodyguards, all former military from various countries. His compound is fortified and has multiple escape routes. A direct assault would require significant force and careful coordination. She paused, studying Rodriguez's face. However, I do have detailed intelligence on his security routines, his communication schedules, and a weakness in his perimeter defenses that could be exploited by a small, well-trained team. Rodriguez's radio crackled again. Badger 7, we are aborting helicopter extraction due to reported anti-aircraft threats. New mission parameters are being developed. Maintain position and continue intelligence gathering with Captain Volkov. Elena nodded with satisfaction. Colonel Harrison made the right choice. Now, Chief Rodriguez, I have a proposal. Your team has the tactical capabilities I lack, and I have the intelligence your team needs. If we work together, we can eliminate al-Rashid and secure his chemical weapons intelligence before he disappears again. Rodriguez looked toward the compound, then back at Elena. The woman sitting beside him claimed to be a former enemy special forces operator with critical intelligence about imminent terrorist attacks. Everything about the situation violated standard operating procedures, but the potential consequences of inaction were catastrophic. What exactly are you proposing, Captain? Rodriguez asked. Elena smiled for the first time since their encounter began. I am proposing, Chief Rodriguez, that we prevent a catastrophe. Elena reached into her tactical pack and withdrew a weatherproof case containing detailed surveillance photos and hand-drawn maps. Rodriguez was immediately impressed by the quality and thoroughness of her intelligence gathering. The photographs showed the compound from multiple angles, with defensive positions clearly marked and guard rotation schedules documented with precise timing notations. I have been observing al-Rashid's operation for 37 days, Elena explained, spreading the materials on a flat rock between them. His security follows predictable patterns, but they are more sophisticated than typical insurgent operations. Look here. She pointed to a series of photographs showing guards positioned at various points around the compound. These men are not local recruits. I have identified former Iraqi Republican Guard, ex-Syrian army officers, and at least 2 individuals who appear to be Chechen separatists. Al-Rashid is paying premium wages for experienced fighters. Rodriguez studied the photos carefully. The tactical implications were significant. Professional soldiers would be far more difficult to outmaneuver than typical insurgent forces. They would know how to coordinate defensive fire, maintain communication discipline, and react effectively to unexpected threats. Elena continued her briefing. The compound has 3 main buildings. The central structure houses al-Rashid's living quarters and communication equipment. The eastern building serves as barracks for his security force. The western building is where I believe he stores sensitive materials, including the chemical weapons intelligence we discussed. She pulled out a detailed hand-drawn map that showed impressive tactical awareness. Every window, door, and defensive position was marked with symbols that Rodriguez recognized from military planning documents. The level of detail suggested weeks of careful observation and professional military training. The weakness in his security occurs every morning between 4:30 and 4:45 hours, Elena explained. During this 15-minute window, the guards change shifts and there is a blind spot on the southern approach. A small team could penetrate the perimeter undetected if they moved quickly and precisely. Rodriguez keyed his radio. Phoenix Base, Badger 7. I need to conference with my team leader and tactical specialist. Request permission to brief Petty Officer Stevens on current intelligence. Permission was granted within minutes, and Rodriguez signaled for Stevens to approach their position. Stevens moved carefully up the rocky slope, his eyes constantly scanning for threats while maintaining awareness of Elena's position and weapons. When Stevens reached them, Elena repeated her intelligence briefing, adding details that had emerged during her extended observation period. Stevens asked pointed tactical questions that demonstrated his experience with similar operations, and Elena's answers showed deep understanding of military strategy and battlefield dynamics. Captain, Stevens said after reviewing the materials, this is some of the most detailed tactical intelligence I've seen in 12 years of operations. How did you gather this level of information without being detected? Elena pointed to various concealed positions marked on her map. I established 3 different observation posts and rotated between them on irregular schedules. I used the same principles that made me effective as a sniper: patience, discipline, and absolute attention to detail. She gestured toward her Barrett rifle. This weapon allowed me to maintain observation from distances that kept me outside their security perimeter. The longest observation session was 18 hours without movement. during which I documented their entire daily routine. Rodriguez was beginning to understand why Elena had achieved such an impressive kill record. Her approach to intelligence gathering showed the same meticulous attention to detail that would be required for extreme long-range shots. The mental discipline required to remain motionless for 18 hours was extraordinary. "Captain," Rodriguez said, "you mentioned a 3,247-meter shot earlier. Can you provide details about that engagement?" Elena's expression grew more serious. 2 weeks ago, Al-Rashid's lieutenant, a man named Qasim, was coordinating a weapons transfer from a hilltop 3 kilometers northeast of here. I had been tracking his movements for 4 days, waiting for the right opportunity. She pointed to a distant ridge barely visible through the heat haze. The shot required calculating for wind speed, temperature variations, air pressure, and the Coriolis effect due to Earth's rotation. At that distance, even the humidity level affects bullet trajectory. Stevens whistled quietly. "Captain, that's beyond the effective range of most sniper rifles. How did you compensate for all those variables?" 15 years of training and experience," Elena replied simply. "I spent 3 days calculating ballistics and environmental factors. The shot itself was the culmination of everything I had learned about precision marksmanship." She picked up her Barrett and checked the scope settings. "This rifle has been modified with enhanced optics and a specialized barrel. The ammunition is hand-loaded to precise specifications, but ultimately, the equipment is only as effective as the shooter's ability to read environmental conditions and calculate trajectory." Rodriguez's radio crackled with an incoming transmission. "Badger 7, Phoenix Base. Senior Command has reviewed your situation reports. We are authorizing limited tactical cooperation with Captain Volkov, pending verification of her intelligence through independent sources." Elena nodded approvingly. "Colonel Harrison is making practical decisions. However, I must emphasize that time is critical. Al-Rashid has been using encrypted satellite communications to coordinate with his contacts. Based on the timing of these communications, I believe the chemical weapons attacks are being accelerated." She pulled out a small electronic device that Rodriguez recognized as a sophisticated signal intercept unit. "I have been monitoring his communications frequencies. 3 hours ago, he received a message that caused immediate changes in his security protocols. His guards have increased their alert status, and he has moved up his departure schedule." "Departure schedule?" Stevens asked. "Al-Rashid never remains in one location for more than 6 weeks, Elena explained. "According to my intelligence, he was planning to leave this compound in 5 days. However, the message he received this morning suggests he may depart much sooner, possibly tonight." Rodriguez felt the tactical situation shifting rapidly. If their target was preparing to leave, they had a very narrow window to act. Once Al-Rashid disappeared into the mountain networks, tracking him again could take months, during which time his planned attacks could proceed unhindered. "Captain," Rodriguez said, "if we're going to work together on this, I need complete honesty about your capabilities and limitations. My team's lives depend on accurate information." Elena met his gaze directly. "Chief Rodriguez, I am carrying enough ammunition for 12 precisely aimed shots. I have food and water for 3 more days. My communication equipment can intercept his transmissions, but cannot transmit outside this immediate area. I am exceptionally skilled at long-range engagement, but have limited capability for close-quarters combat in a fortified position." She gestured toward the compound. "Your team has the tactical skills and equipment for a successful assault. I have the intelligence and overwatch capability to ensure your approach goes undetected. Together we can accomplish what neither of us could achieve alone." Rodriguez looked at Stevens, who nodded slightly. The tactical math was becoming clear. Elena's intelligence was too valuable to ignore, and her demonstrated capabilities suggested she could provide critical support for their mission. The question was whether they could trust a former enemy operator enough to risk their lives on her information. Rodriguez made the call to Phoenix Base that would either end his career or prevent a catastrophic terrorist attack. "Colonel Harrison, Badger 7 requests immediate authorization for joint tactical operation with Captain Volkov. Time-sensitive target may depart location within hours." The response came back faster than expected. "Badger 7, authorization granted for limited cooperation. You have tactical command of the operation. Captain Volkov will provide overwatch and intelligence support only. Confirm understanding." Elena smiled grimly. "Your Colonel Harrison is intelligent. He understands that sometimes unconventional situations require unconventional solutions. Rodriguez gathered his team for final mission planning. In addition to Stevens, SEAL Team 7 consisted of Petty Officer Martinez, their explosives specialist Petty Officer Thompson, their communications expert, and Petty Officer Jackson, their designated marksman. Each man had years of combat experience, but none had worked with a former enemy operator under these circumstances. "Listen up," Rodriguez addressed his team while Elena finalized her equipment check. "We have a tactical opportunity to eliminate a high-value target and secure critical intelligence about imminent chemical weapons attacks. Captain Volkov will provide overwatch support from this position while we execute a dawn assault on the compound." Martinez raised his hand. "Chief, what's our extraction plan if things go sideways?" Elena answered before Rodriguez could respond. "Petty Officer Martinez, there are 3 extraction routes from the compound, all of which I have mapped during my surveillance. The eastern route leads to a dry riverbed that provides concealment for 2 kilometers. The northern route connects to a series of caves where a small team could evade pursuit for days. The western route leads directly back to this position, where I can provide covering fire." Thompson studied Elena's maps carefully. "Captain, what kind of communication equipment does Al-Rashid have in that compound?" "Satellite communication array on the roof of the main building, encrypted radio network connecting all guard positions, and at least 2 handheld devices capable of reaching external contacts," Elena replied immediately. "Your first priority should be disabling his communications to prevent him from alerting other cells about the attack." Jackson, the team's marksman, was examining Elena's Barrett rifle with professional interest. "Captain, at what range will you be providing overwatch support?" "Approximately 800 meters from the compound," Elena answered. "At that distance, I can engage any threats that emerge from the buildings while remaining outside the effective range of their small arms fire. I can also cover your primary extraction route." Rodriguez was impressed by his team's professionalism. Despite the unusual circumstances, they were treating Elena as they would any other tactical asset, focusing on operational details rather than political complications. "Captain," Rodriguez said, "we need to coordinate our approach timing with your overwatch capability. When can you be in position?" Elena checked her watch. "I can move to my overwatch position and be ready to provide support by 0400 hours. The assault should begin at exactly 0430 during the guard change window I described. I will have clear sight lines to all 3 buildings and can engage any threats that your team cannot handle." Stevens had been studying the compound through his scope. "Chief, I'm seeing movement in the main building. Looks like they're preparing vehicles for departure." Elena immediately shifted to her Barrett and aimed toward the compound. After several seconds of observation, she lowered the rifle with a concerned expression. "They are accelerating their departure schedule. I count 6 individuals loading equipment into 2 vehicles. If they leave the compound, tracking them will become exponentially more difficult." Rodriguez felt the tactical situation rapidly changing. The window for action was closing faster than expected. Phoenix Base, Badger 7. Target appears to be preparing for immediate departure. Requesting permission to advance timeline for tactical operation. Badger 7, understand your urgency. You have authorization to proceed at your discretion. Be advised that extraction support will not be available until after 0600 hours. Elena was already packing her equipment for movement to the overwatch position. "Chief Rodriguez, if we are going to act, it must be now. Once Al-Rashid's convoy leaves the compound, we lose our opportunity to secure the chemical weapons intelligence." Rodriguez made the decision that would define the next several hours. "All right, people, we're moving to accelerated timeline. Captain Volkov, how long do you need to reach overwatch position?" 20 minutes for movement, 5 minutes for final positioning and range calculations," Elena replied, shouldering her pack with practiced efficiency. "Martinez, how long for you to prepare charges for the communication array?" Rodriguez asked. 10 minutes to rig the explosives, Chief. Remote detonation on your signal." Rodriguez looked at his watch. It was 13:47 hours. "We execute at 14:30. Captain Volkov moves to overwatch position immediately. My team will approach from the southern route during the next guard change. Thompson, you disable their communications. Martinez, you secure the western building where the intelligence is stored. Stevens and Jackson, you're with me for the main building." Elena extended her hand to Rodriguez. "Chief, it has been an honor to work with professional soldiers. Your team's reputation is well-deserved. Rodriguez shook her hand, noting the firm grip and steady gaze. Captain, your intelligence has probably saved American lives. We won't forget that. As Elena began her movement toward the overwatch position, Rodriguez watched her navigate the rocky terrain with impressive skill. Her movement was silent and economical, showing the kind of tactical awareness that came from years of operating in hostile territory. Chief, Stevens said quietly, I've got to admit, working with a former Russian Special Forces operator wasn't covered in any of our training scenarios. Stevens, Rodriguez replied, nothing about this mission has followed standard scenarios. But that woman has intelligence that could prevent mass casualties. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts about people. Elena reached her overwatch position and immediately began setting up her Barrett rifle. From Rodriguez's position, he could see her making precise adjustments to her scope and calculating range measurements. The level of professionalism and attention to detail reinforced his decision to trust her intelligence. Rodriguez's radio crackled with Elena's voice. Badger 7 Overwatch is in position. I have clear sightlines to all 3 buildings and both vehicles. Confirming ready for operation. Rodriguez looked at his team, all of whom were making final equipment checks and preparing for the assault. In 15 minutes, they would be moving against a heavily defended compound, based on intelligence provided by a former enemy operator. The tactical risks were enormous, but the potential consequences of inaction were even greater. All stations Badger 7. Operation commences in 14 minutes. Stay sharp, follow the plan, and let's bring everyone home. At precisely 14:30 hours, Rodriguez's team began their approach through the southern blind spot that Elena had identified. The terrain was treacherous with loose rocks that could alert the guards if disturbed. But Elena's intelligence proved accurate. The 15-minute window during guard change provided exactly the concealment they needed. Rodriguez could see Elena's position on the distant ridge, though he knew that al-Rashid's guards would not be able to spot her even with binoculars. Her camouflage and positioning were professional grade, utilizing natural terrain features to break up her silhouette while maintaining clear sight lines to the compound. The team moved in tactical formation, with Stevens leading the approach and Martinez carrying the explosives for the communication array. Thompson monitored radio frequencies to ensure their approach remained undetected, while Jackson provided security with his precision rifle. As they reached the compound's outer perimeter, Rodriguez could see that Elena's surveillance had been remarkably accurate. The guard positions were exactly where she had indicated, and the timing of the guard change was occurring precisely as she had described. Elena's voice came through their radio earpieces in a whisper. Badger 7 Overwatch. I have visual on 6 guards changing positions. Window is open for your approach. 2 vehicles in main courtyard are being loaded with equipment cases. Rodriguez signaled his team to move into final assault positions. Martinez split off toward the communication array on the main building's roof, while Thompson headed for the eastern barracks to disable their radio equipment. Stevens and Jackson moved with Rodriguez toward the main building where al-Rashid was likely located. The first indication that their approach had been successful came when Martinez's voice crackled through their earpieces. Chief, charges are set on the communication array. Ready for detonation on your signal. Thompson's report followed immediately. Communication equipment in the barracks is disabled. No resistance encountered. Rodriguez positioned himself outside the main building's entrance, noting that Elena's intelligence about the compound's layout was proving accurate in every detail. The building's structure, the positioning of windows and doors, even the type of security measures were exactly as she had described. Overwatch Badger 7. We are in position for entry. Confirm status of sentries. Elena's response came immediately. Badger 7, I have visual on 4 guards in the main courtyard. 2 are loading vehicles. 2 are positioned near the entrance. Additional movement visible through windows of main building. Rodriguez made the tactical decision to begin the assault. All stations, Badger 7, execute. Execute. Martinez detonated the charges on the communication array, creating a thunderous explosion that immediately disabled al-Rashid's ability to communicate with external contacts. The blast also served as the signal for the team to breach the compound. Stevens and Jackson moved through the main entrance while Rodriguez provided covering fire. Thompson emerged from the eastern building, having secured the barracks area without resistance. The initial phase of the assault was proceeding exactly as planned. Then Elena's voice cut through their radio communications with urgent intensity. Badger 7 Overwatch. Multiple armed individuals emerging from concealed positions. Count 6, repeat 6, additional combatants not previously observed. They are moving to flank your position from the north. Rodriguez realized that al-Rashid's security was more sophisticated than even Elena's excellent surveillance had revealed. Hidden reserve forces had been positioned outside the main compound, probably as a response to the increased security alert Elena had mentioned. Stevens, Jackson, be advised we have flanking movement from the north. Thompson, can you reposition to cover our 6? Before Thompson could respond, Elena's Barrett rifle spoke for the first time. The distinctive crack of the .50 caliber round echoed across the valley, followed immediately by Elena's calm voice. Threat eliminated. One hostile down at 847 meters. Rodriguez could see the effect of Elena's shot through the compound's northern entrance. One of the flanking guards had been eliminated with precision that defied belief. The remaining threats immediately sought cover, but Elena had clear sight lines to most of their positions. The Barrett fired again, and Elena's voice returned to their radio. Second threat eliminated. Remaining hostiles are taking cover behind vehicle in northern courtyard. Stevens and Jackson had penetrated the main building and were encountering resistance from al-Rashid's personal security team. Rodriguez could hear the sound of close-quarters combat as his men engaged multiple targets in the building's interior. Chief, Jackson's voice came through the radio with obvious stress. We've got a problem. Al-Rashid is barricaded in a reinforced room with at least 3 bodyguards. The door is steel-plated and we can't breach it with standard charges. Elena's voice cut through their tactical communications. Badger 7, I have a solution. The reinforced room has a window facing my position. If you can force them away from the window, I can engage through the glass. Rodriguez assessed the tactical situation rapidly. Elena was offering to take an extremely difficult shot through a window into a room where his men were engaged in active combat. The margin for error was essentially 0. A miscalculation could result in friendly casualties. Overwatch, can you guarantee precision at that range through glass? Badger 7, I have made more difficult shots, but I need your men to be clear of my sight line for 30 seconds. Rodriguez made the call. Stevens, Jackson, clear the room and take cover in the hallway. Overwatch is going to engage through the window. There was a brief pause before Stevens responded. Roger, Chief, we're clear. Window is the second from the left on the north side of the building. Elena's voice came through their radios with absolute calm. Target acquired. Glass will scatter on impact. Your men should remain in cover for 10 seconds after my shot. Rodriguez could see Elena through his binoculars, her eye pressed to the scope of the Barrett rifle. Her body was perfectly still and he could see her finger resting lightly on the trigger. The shot she was attempting required not only exceptional marksmanship, but also precise timing to avoid hitting friendly forces. The Barrett fired, and the sound echoed across the compound like thunder. Through the building's window, Rodriguez could see the glass shatter and hear shouting from inside the reinforced room. Stevens's voice came through the radio immediately. Target down. Al-Rashid is eliminated. 2 bodyguards surrendering. Elena's voice followed with characteristic professionalism. Shot confirmed. Target eliminated at 863 meters through standard window glass. Compound appears secure. Rodriguez felt a surge of relief and professional admiration. Elena had just executed one of the most difficult shots imaginable under combat conditions, eliminating their primary target while his men were engaged in close-quarters combat in the same room. All stations. Badger 7. Primary objective complete. Begin search for intelligence materials. Thompson, secure those vehicles before anyone else tries to leave. Martinez emerged from the western building carrying several cases of documents and electronic equipment. Chief, I found what looks like detailed plans for coordinated attacks in multiple cities. This is exactly what Captain Volkov described. Elena's voice came through their radios one final time as Overwatch. Badger 7, compound is secure. No remaining threats visible. Outstanding tactical execution by your team. 2 hours later, Rodriguez sat with Elena on the ridge where their unlikely partnership had begun, reviewing the intelligence materials that Martinez had recovered from the compound. The documents were even more disturbing than Elena had predicted, detailing coordinated chemical weapons attacks planned for major population centers across 3 continents. Captain, Rodriguez said, studying a detailed map marked with target locations. This intelligence could prevent thousands of casualties. How did you know al-Rashid possessed this level of operational planning? Elena pointed to several photographs showing meetings between al-Rashid and unknown individuals. My team was killed while investigating reports of chemical weapons being moved through this region. Before they died, they transmitted fragments of intelligence about a major coordination meeting. I spent 6 weeks piecing together the full scope of al-Rashid's operations. Thompson had been examining the electronic equipment recovered from the compound. Chief, this communication gear contains encrypted files with contact information for terrorist cells in 12 different countries. The intelligence value of this material is extraordinary. Rodriguez's radio crackled with an incoming transmission from Colonel Harrison. Badger 7. Preliminary analysis of the materials you recovered confirms Captain Volkov's assessment. We have teams moving to intercept the terrorist cells identified in the documents. This operation has prevented what could have been the largest coordinated attack since 9/11. Elena nodded with satisfaction. Colonel Harrison, the credit belongs to Chief Rodriguez and his team. I provided intelligence, but they executed a flawless tactical operation under extremely difficult circumstances. Stevens approached their position, carrying additional materials recovered from al-Rashid's personal quarters. Chief, we found detailed records of weapons transactions, including the locations of 3 chemical weapons caches. Captain Volkov, your intelligence about the scope of this operation was completely accurate. Elena stood and walked to the edge of the ridge, looking out over the valley where the compound was now secured by additional coalition forces that had arrived for cleanup operations. My team died believing they were investigating a routine weapons smuggling operation. Now I know they died preventing something much worse. Rodriguez joined her at the edge of the ridge. Captain, what will you do now? The intelligence community will want to debrief you extensively about your surveillance methods and the information you gathered. Elena smiled slightly. Chief Rodriguez, I have been operating independently for 6 weeks with no official support from any government. I am what you might call a freelance operator. My debriefing will be complicated by the fact that my mission officially never existed. Colonel Harrison's voice came through the radio again. Captain Volkov, if you are monitoring this frequency, please be advised that Senior Command has authorized offering you a consultant contract with appropriate compensation and legal protection. Your skills and knowledge would be valuable assets for future operations. Elena looked at Rodriguez with surprise. Your government is offering employment to a former Russian Special Forces operator? Captain, Rodriguez replied, your actions today saved American lives and prevented a catastrophic terrorist attack. In my experience, that kind of professional competence transcends political boundaries. Jackson approached them carrying Elena's Barrett rifle, which she had left at the overwatch position during the post-operation cleanup. Captain, I've never seen shooting like what you demonstrated today. That shot through the window while we were in active combat. That was beyond anything I've seen in 15 years of military service. Elena accepted her rifle and checked the action automatically. Petty Officer Jackson, that shot was the culmination of everything I learned during my career. The technical challenge was significant, but the tactical necessity made it straightforward. When lives depend on precision, there is no room for doubt. Martinez had been documenting the scene for the intelligence analysts who would arrive later. Captain, can you tell us more about your 3 47-meter shot? The ballistic calculations for that range are beyond what most snipers would attempt. Elena gestured toward the distant ridge where she had made the record-breaking shot 2 weeks earlier. That engagement required 3 days of preparation and environmental monitoring. The target was stationary for extended periods, which allowed me to calculate precise ballistic solutions. At that range, atmospheric conditions are as important as marksmanship skills. She pointed to her rifle's scope and the various environmental monitoring devices attached to her equipment. Temperature, humidity, air pressure, wind speed, and direction at multiple altitudes. All of these factors affect bullet trajectory over extreme distances. The shot itself took 17 minutes to calculate and execute. Thompson was examining the ballistic computer attached to Elena's equipment pack. Captain, this equipment is more sophisticated than what our designated marksmen carry. Where did you acquire gear this advanced? Some equipment I retained from my Spetsnaz service, Elena replied. Other items I acquired through contacts in the international military community. When you operate independently, you learn to adapt and improvise with whatever resources are available. Rodriguez's radio crackled with another transmission from Colonel Harrison. Badger 7, extraction helicopters are inbound to your position. ETA 15 minutes. Captain Volkov, please confirm whether you will accept our offer of consultation contract. Elena looked at Rodriguez and his team, then at the compound below where their joint operation had prevented a catastrophic attack. Colonel Harrison, I accept your offer. However, I have conditions. I maintain operational independence, I choose my assignments, and I retain the right to refuse missions that conflict with my personal principles. Captain Volkov, your conditions are acceptable. Welcome to the team. Rodriguez extended his hand to Elena one final time. Captain, it's been an honor working with a professional of your caliber. I hope we have the opportunity to work together again. Elena shook his hand firmly. Chief Rodriguez, your team executed a flawless operation under extraordinary circumstances. I would be honored to work with SEAL Team 7 again in the future. As the sound of approaching helicopters echoed across the valley, Rodriguez reflected on the events of the past 24 hours. He had begun the mission hunting a terrorist coordinator, and ended it working with one of the most skilled snipers he had ever encountered. Elena's 3,247-meter kill record had initially seemed like an impossible claim, but her demonstrated abilities during their joint operation had proven that her reputation was well-deserved. The helicopters appeared over the ridge, and Elena gathered her equipment with the same methodical precision she had shown throughout their operation. Rodriguez watched her pack her Barrett rifle, noting the care she took with each component. The weapon that had achieved the longest confirmed kill in the theater of operations was being handled with the respect it deserved. As they prepared for extraction, Rodriguez realized that Elena Volkov represented something unique in modern warfare, a skilled professional whose abilities transcended national boundaries and political affiliations. Her willingness to share critical intelligence and risk her life alongside American forces had prevented what could have been one of the most devastating terrorist attacks in history. The mission was complete. The intelligence was secured, and a new partnership had been forged between former adversaries united by their commitment to preventing catastrophic loss of life. Rodriguez knew that Elena's transition from independent operator to consultant would create new opportunities for joint operations that could leverage her unique skills and extensive knowledge of international terrorist networks. As the helicopters landed and the extraction began, Rodriguez looked one last time at the compound where al-Rashid's chemical weapons conspiracy had been dismantled. The operation had succeeded because of Elena's intelligence, his team's tactical skills, and a shared commitment to protecting innocent lives regardless of political boundaries. Chief Petty Officer Marcus, Rodriguez had observed a sniper with a Barrett .50 caliber rifle and discovered that she held a 3,247-meter kill record. More importantly, he had discovered that professional competence and shared values could overcome any obstacle when lives were at stake.